Oh, hey, look, we're back. We're building an FJ40. This is as informal as we can possibly be. Put your leftover leaves in a bag. Put them somewhere with all of your other parts, because in the future, you will almost certainly need these. Depending on what weight you end up outfitting to, you're probably going to have to add leaves. The front axle I did with 2 helpers and 1 main, and the rear axle I did with 2 helpers and 1 main, because as I mentioned before, this is not rock crawler stuff. We're not going to get good weight distribution, not in terms of fore to aft, not in terms of sprung to unsprung, none of it. The body's heavy, the body is high. Relative to the width of the vehicle, it is very tall, but it looks so good, and it really does pass her test. It really does pass the condo test, where driving it does indeed spark joy. I have long thought about fabricating my own, the bushings, the bushings on the leaves. I've thought about making my own of these, because these are steel. But while checking on the ones that have been in Bruce for some time now, they look fine. They look fine. So I'm not too worried about it. I find it easier to assemble this thing correctly, which is shackle. Is this the shackle? Shackles to the outside. You want to tighten them down so that they're not tight. They need to move freely, and they'll kind of break themselves in. It is just plastic on plastic, and the fat part faces to the inside. Luckily, the bushings fit pretty darn tight into the leaves, so everything doesn't fall apart when you're trying to assemble it. Do we get great pinion angles? We do not. Do we have adjustment over these pinion angles? In a way, yes. MKRC builds. You can find him on the Canyon Discord. You can find him on Instagram. He makes a block, which I do not have on hand, but will be installed probably in one of these episodes, that rotates the rear axle, I want to say around 15 degrees. So you get a nice pinion angle at the rear. Front pinion angle, I have not found to be particularly important, as I have not changed it on any of the FJ builds here. And again, not a rock crawler, but the approach and departure angles, they're not bad. Particularly when running a basically 5-inch tall tire. The listed as 4.8 Trepador is like 4.95 inches tall. It is a hair under 5 inches. Now, remember, keep track that this vehicle is effectively 1/7 scale. So a 5-inch tall tire would be like a 35, and it's actually not quite. If we do the math out appropriately, it's 1.687. It's 6.87 to 1 scale, so it's not quite exactly 1/7 scale. If the FJ were 1/6 scale, meaning it would be, okay, the way scales work, the difference between 10th scale, it's like pizza. It's like pizza. The difference between 12th scale and 10th scale is fairly big, but the difference between 7th scale and 6th scale is enormous. So some of you may be familiar with the Axial SCX6, and the 6 in its name does indeed imply that it is 1/6 scale. That vehicle is 30 pounds and has a wheelbase somewhere around 500 millimeters. This vehicle has a 330, between 330 and 335, depending on what you read. and weighs 8 pounds. So there's the difference between 7th scale and 6th scale. And then a 10th scale, an actual 10th scale, and not what we have been, for whatever reason, they gotta call everything 10th scale. A 10th scale would be something like an RC 4-wheel drive Marlin. 287 millimeter wheelbase, 5 pounds with a hard body on it, maybe 6 pounds. Competitive 10th scale crawlers would be in the high 4s to low 5 weights. So you see how it goes up really fast. And then if you wanted to get something like a 1/4 scale, 5th scale, a 5th scale will be 3.5, 4 feet long. So each time, well, what's the simplest way to phrase it? Imagine a half scale car. Like the car you drive every day, imagine that car in half scale. And then if we go to 3rd scale, like the sizes go burp, 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 burp. So moving from 24th to 18th scale, it goes 24th, 18th. But when it goes 7th, 6th, and then if we go to 5th, 5th. So it keeps getting big, 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 big. When I am driving this, when I am trailing in one of these, there is something very nice about the scale. And I have heard many folks say that they think that the ultimate scale vehicle is the aforementioned SCX6. And again, I have no counterpoint to offer to that. I don't see why it wouldn't be. It's huge, meaning you can fit... I knew he was out here. Meaning you can fit massive battery capacity in it. I run LAHV 4200s, either from Z or Ovonic. And because of the size of the vehicle and how ample it is, I run one under the hood and one stored in the back. So I hit the ground with 8,400 milliamps of LAHV, which on a 16-pound vehicle, a single one of those 4200s will do about 4 miles. So we are building for the long haul. Not mentioned because the official first episode, this would be the 3rd episode. The 2nd episode is the one that came right before this one. The first episode was the live stream of July 25th, in which we unboxed it and we started working on it. And the first thing when you start working on it is when FMS ships this thing, they don't know what grease is. So you're going to have to completely disassemble, 2 screws to remove, completely disassemble the gearbox. While you're at it, run a 2.5 millimeter drill bit through this hole and drill it out. Because the plastic is fiber reinforced and it is hard enough that if you attempt to put in a screw that is too long for the non-through hole, what will happen is the screw will bottom out, it will just eat all the threads out, and the whole powertrain up front is only held in place by 2 screws. Now, you will have safety from that measure because when you buy the leaf kit, it comes with this whole front piece. The vehicle comes with the exact same front piece that has the leaf hangers on it. In the rear, the pieces do not. So you have to, the leaf comes with this brace, which has the leaf hanger on it, and it replaces the bumper mount, which has the leaf hanger on it. But in the front, you're just bolting on the leaf hangers. That brings us to another point where ordinarily there is a shock attached to this axle, and the shock attaches right, I threw them in the bin. So it's a double shear, but inside the double shear it goes suspension link and then shock. And the shock is in one of these back, here's one. It's, because it's for the 4-link, it has no damping at all, none. It is 70 millimeters long. That is another in the litany of problems, because once we've omitted this, if you look at this, when you look at it, you go, well, now there's really no place to mount the shock. It's also a 70 millimeter shock, which usually goes from right there to right there. But that's not a shock. For a leaf, we basically just need to provide damping. We need to provide damping force. And those shocks cannot provide any damping force whatsoever. They are discardable. Much of what is in the, when you put the leafs on, much of what comes off is just discardable. It doesn't really have, it doesn't serve any other purpose. So then what we have to do is we have to locate and fit an appropriate shock, an appropriate damper. As this runs 70 millimeter, you are extremely limited in the availability of those shocks. And when we went through the Bruce overhaul program on the blue FJ40 that is not this blue FJ40, which is soon to be a pink FJ40, we went through an entire process of taking good old RC Lions, sourced on Amazon. All links, should he remember to do them, will be below. These are alloy shock towers for the TRX4. And they just, that's the panhard mount, which we don't need. They just happen to coincidentally fit over this chassis quite nicely. It's much easier to exhibit it in the back. So this one, I believe we put, I'm gonna have to look at our other guy. We gotta drill holes. There aren't existing holes. And after we've drilled the holes, we are going to have to cut into the body, because the shock towers will be positioned right about here and right about here. You have to cut two little square holes. It's not a problem. And I would go further as to say, one of the best decisions I ever made when it comes to the FMS FJ40 is putting these shock towers on, because a TRX4 shock tower allows you to run a 100 millimeter shock. And do you know what is everywhere? 100 millimeter shocks. And because you don't have to run a spring on them, you're just using a 100 millimeter damper. It finally gives us the use for 10 Pro shocks, which, look how much shaft, and then watch, this is fully compressed. They made the body too short for the shaft, but they are 100 millimeters long, and they fit basically perfectly, like quite perfectly. And over time, after you've put, we'll do it in kilometers. After you've put 100 kilometers on here, the springs are going to be pretty naked. So you can just put springs. You can put mini springs. You can put the cups and the springs back on, add a pound at each corner, and then when that starts to soften up, you can add even more. So we're doubling up the suspension. For this, we're just going to mount them as dampers. This is currently fitted with about 40 weight. When you build a shock for your FJ, you basically want to build a shock that feels like you have to go. I have two options over here. I have Traxxas 80 weight, which is 1,000 CST, and then the next smallest jump I have is Associated Factory Team Diff Fluid, which is 3,000 CST, aka 80 was needed, 240 weight, thereabouts. For this, which is probably for its maiden voyage going to be between 10 and 11 pounds, that's where my guess is, 240 is probably not too heavy. When you get this weight moving side to side, you want to control the leafs, otherwise they are uncontrolled springs. That motion right there will return so much energy that you'll just be flopping over all the time. And the flopping over all the time, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of part of it. You will learn to drive. Crawling and trailing, again, very, very different things. As I mentioned, Jiminy Christmas, the people at FMS, they don't know what grease is. So this thing comes completely, wholly ungreased. There's basically no lubrication whatsoever. Luckily, it is just 3 bolts, to take this apart. And I mean, I wish I could spin it better. There's no resistance in there because there's no grease in there. And when you trail, you don't realize, if you've never trailed, if you have trailed, you know, and if you've never trailed, you might not know that routine maintenance suddenly becomes a thing. You can run a rock crawler, I am living proof, for years of typical use and do nothing but wipe it off every once in a while. Bruce has been through a service and a full overhaul program, and his gearbox is probably due for a service at this point. It's like owning a full-size car. So as I have another one, you notice almost no gear noise out of that one. Packed with my favorite Stay Lube CV joint grease. You're going to pack your axle housings as well with Stay Lube CV joint grease. And we get to the drive shafts, which are not bad at all. Like, these are reasonably well made, and they are sequenced, they're clocked, they line up correctly. You see the 2 shiny bits are perfectly in line with one another. You're going to want to obtain yourself a bottle of one of 2 things. Buy whichever one is cheaper. My 2 primary advices are Smooth and Squirt. This is bicycle chain wax. And what you're going to do is, the day or 2 before you plan on going somewhere where you know that water is going to be, you're just going to squirt up these joints here, and you're going to squirt up the universals up here in the front with the chain wax. It's going to cure, and then what's going to happen is your vehicle is not going to squeak, no matter how much water you drive it through. And you're going to do this after you grease the snot into the gearbox, the housings, and the transfer case. Now, am I particular about the grease? No. Use the grease that you like. If you have a grease and you go, this is my grease, that's the grease. That's the perfect grease to use. I personally go with the Stay Lube CV joint grease. You can see a little bit of the bluish bottle over there. Link in description. It's about $13, I want to say, for a 4-ounce tube. If you're in Europe, I don't know what the equivalent is. It's high moly. It's very high moly, which is why I prefer it. The moly helps it stick to the gears longer. Also, think about, if you're familiar at all with the mechanics of motor vehicles. Now I got to think of a long N word to go with. Careful. If you're familiar with motor vehicles, a CV joint spins as fast as the speed of the tire. So the grease is basically designed to stay in those gears and not sling off. That particular CV joint grease comes with a warning on it that tells you explicitly not to put it in bearings, because it is so, I think the word is lubricious. That doesn't feel like a word, but I think that's the word. That what will happen is, if you use it in bearings, it will coat the bearing, and it will be so slick that the bearing will stop rotating in the race. It will just slide, and it will actually cause the bearings to wear out. So, you can pack these pretty good. Most of the time it is open bearings, so don't fill the whole pumpkin with it. And one of the weaknesses that the FJ40 from FMS does not have is that the pumpkin, the cover, is these 4 little screws, and it's a cavern in there. So servicing and greasing that is super easy. You remove 4 screws, you squirt a bunch of grease in there, you cover it back up. The point of using the CV joint grease in the first place is that you can go longer in between those grease services. The longer I can run on the same grease, the better. I don't want to have to do, I don't want 20-mile services. Now, this is not the real life, this is just fantasy. So, we're not getting away with, you got to think of it in scale. Think of it in scale, but think of the scale like 100 to 1, or would that be 10 to 1? Think of it as 100 to 1, where around 30 miles of driving, you're probably going to have to go through and do a medium service. I'm going to have to pair this to a radio because I want to run this because it feels a little tight in the mesh, but it is brand new, super fresh, and has never even had power applied to it. So it could just be perception. We're going to slap the drive shafts on here because why not? We can. They're leaf springs, so there's no... The drive shafts don't change lengths. It's non-dynamic. Everything is greased. You can also, as a bonus, if you would like to treat yourself, and I can't give you exact numbers off the top of my head. This is a little bit more reliant on the condition of your parts bins. But if you want to put shielded bearings, and by that I mean rubber shielded bearings, into the places that need bearings, that's probably not a bad idea. I did that on the transfer case, because the transfer case is the next lowest part relative to the axles, and there are times that the immersion, and I don't mean the scale immersion, I mean the immersion into a fluid, will come up to about the height of the transfer case, which is why we go a little bit nuts with the wax and the molly and all that stuff. So what I like to do is I like to obtain a hollow ball for the shock that is going to stand the shock off an appropriate amount. And I don't want to use the Vanquish specific ones because those are Vanquish specific. We instead are going to use, we'll just use spacers. We'll just use spacers. And I know I have a lot of the SR Graphics stainless. I like to run the shocks upside down because it's what I do. And we are going to get we'll get 2 of these with hollow balls installed so that we can mock up a front and a rear. The leaf install is really, it's straightforward. It is no instructions included or implied at all. It just comes with bags of parts. And what I can tell you is that there is a fat side and a skinny side. See how there's a little ledge there and there isn't? The fat side is to the inside because that will line, you want your leaves in line with the chassis rails. That's basically all you're doing. And then again, stainless everything. Stainless everything. This vehicle, as it sits right now, I want to say has 2 non-stainless fasteners because those are M3 by 30 flatheads, and I don't have any stainless M3 by 30 flatheads. We'll figure it out. So this is the method that I like to use. We will get a shock mocked, and then I've got to do some fabrication. So we'll pull this screw. That is an M3 by 8 flathead. What I like to do is use something like this because I believe these go all the way through to the drive shaft. Do they? Yes. So depth-wise, we're looking at 10 millimeters. So we can get away with maybe 10 millimeters. Then we need ourselves a spacer. And the best spacer would be plastic because it will help us plug the hole. Nah, it's too long. There is no perfect spacer for this job. You're going to dig around in what you've got, and you're going to pick out the one that speaks to you. I want a spacer that externally will kind of fit down. This is for a flathead hole, so it's countersunk. I want a spacer that will sit down into that countersunk hole a little bit. And if these work, these are the jam. So these are off of a guitar. So, I mean, your mileage will clearly vary. So we're going to take about half the thickness of that. So this is a 5mm. Let me make sure I have 4. I do. That's a 5mm. So we'll go 8. We'll try a 16. The hope is that a 16 will work because we'll have a 16 passing through there and then passing through there. That actually might 18 might be too long. I mean, all it is the suspension. 18 might be it. That might serve us. Because I want to get one of each mounted. Everything falls apart. Because I don't know why I didn't just remove the screw from the side closer to me. I'm trying to do things upside down, which ends always in tears. 18 is pretty good. Could maybe get away with a 20. And then what we do is we slap that on and we see where does that line up with a shock tower. And the shock tower would have to go right about there. But what if, follow me here. Okay. Pay special attention. If you're going through the somewhat arduous process of converting this over to 100mm shocks, and I highly recommend it. I recommend it maybe more even than the Leafs, and I think the Leafs transform the vehicle. Your ability to not have to run a 70mm shock, because none of them are very good, is absolutely worth the effort. And it's under $20 for the shock towers, and you have to drill a handful of holes. I know that in the front, I want to say that in the front, I put it like this. I reuse a screw hole. I'm going to look at Bruce. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to look at Bruce. Maybe I put the shocks behind the axle. This is the true beauty of having done this once. In the front, we go just like this, and I'm remembering, it's all coming back to me now. We use this screw, we press this up against it, like that, making sure not to go over. I think there might be a little of this plastic we want to trim down. And we make a dot, and we make a dot. And that is the mounting holes for the front. And it lines it up pretty well, perfectly, straight up and down. Straight up, because it's just a damper, the angle doesn't matter. It's not going to affect spring rate because there's no spring. And then in the rear, they are angled forward like this. And I believe that I just used this existing hole, because we didn't have to lock nut it, but I think we're going to go a little bit different. Also, these RC these RC Lions towers are perfect because they have 3 shock mounting holes, and we like the middle one. Meaning you could get away with a 95 and you could get away with a 105. But the 100 goes right in the middle. And I think I used that existing screw so that I only had to drill 1 hole. It puts the shock back at a little bit of an angle. So this time around, we're going to mock it. And I want that shock absolutely straight up and down right there. Oh, also on these towers, there are 2 bonus holes there. So they are at different heights too. You might be able to get away with a 90 on this. But I do like 100 that I don't tend to put in service on other things. So we've got a little hip here, and I'm going to go right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the distance over. I'm going to use a caliper. I'm going to use this guy, and I'm going to make a mark. That is 15 and a half millimeters. And we'll just line it up at the other side. And then we'll drill 8 holes. And the ones in the front, I don't remember, do they need lock nuts? I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the other guy. And we'll see what we did. And then we'll slap 4 towers on it. I am reluctant to do this again as a recording because I've already done it once before. I already did this. Everything I want to do has already been done, so why would I want to go and do it again? Everybody. So, I will drill 8 holes. I'll slap these bits on here, and I will, the Traxxas, you will need the bow tie shaped balls because they are what fit into the recess in the tower like that, because that's incorporated in the Traxxas part. And while I'm at it off screen as well, I will fill the 4 shocks with 240 weight, which should hold it down. And then, honestly, the chassis is almost done, because I did a whole live stream and then an episode. It's a lot of greasing. It's installing the leaves. There's not, like in terms of fabrication, I cut off the link mounts just because I thought it would look better, and I was right, it does. I just did it on a bandsaw. There is some minimal amount of fabrication, and this is extreme. The leafs are quality of experience. It makes it more betterer, and fitting it to 100mm shocks, which just involves cutting 2 square holes in the bed, just makes it so much better. It really, really, I cannot emphasize enough how much better it makes it. Because I have in a drawer right here behind me. Let me see if I can pull the drawer and find them. I have a set of RC 4-wheel drive. Where are you? There we go. I mean, they're beautiful. The RC 4-wheel drive Bilsteins, these look great. They hold oil about as well as an athletic sock. You will pump all of the oil out of them in like 2 trail rides, and you have to put like 5,000 CST in them, and it still won't hold it. So we've got bags to throw away. We've got a lot ahead of us, all right? Because a big part of this is, as I mentioned in the previous one, if you're paying attention, this has to be completely disassembled. Every single part taken off, so that we may transform it from that color to quite most likely this color. We're going to do a couple. I think I have 5 pinks here, and we're going to do some swatches because it looks like that's an appropriately bright pink on this can right here. Then we have to imagine that pink at this scale. That's a lot of pink. So we'll get to that. We will do the steering. I will mention the things that I neglected to mention. Perhaps leading amongst which is the angle wires. Pardon me. You see the screw coming up out of the knuckle over there, and then look at its proximity to the leaf shackle. And then look at where the screw basically just cuts through the middle of the leaf spring. So we've got to do some nonsense over there, as if you don't, like I say, imperfect in the extreme. I need it to sit down a little bit. You see what I'm talking about? We're not trying to make a can opener. And You won't notice it, but it'll have 10 plus pounds on it, and the tires will be folding over and just leaning into that screw and just getting carved up. So we're going to try not to carve these up. That's our one of our junior goals. We will get to the teardown of the body. That is something that I have not covered before. Some of these parts, I'm not explicitly sure how they come off. I've ordered extras in the event that I break some of these pieces. I've pulled the grill. I know how to do that. I've lost both of these on both of my other FJs. They snap off almost immediately. I've got to pull the doors and the hinges. I have to pull the full interior. I don't know if I'm just going to mask the interior or if I'm going to remove like knobs and stuff out of the dash. That will be addressed as we get to it. The fabrication stuff, if you want to see the fabrication stuff, it's called Socks Bop. It's the Stream of Consciousness series, the Bruce Overhaul program. It's like 5 or 6 episodes, and it got us an FJ40 to basically the superized configuration of where this is. He was running a gearbox called the GCM LRT2, which is... I will make a great attempt not to mount a GCM LRT2 in this, and I can't guarantee that it won't happen. So, that's all I got for you right now. I'm going to make my marks and drill my holes and mount my towers and throw the shocks in. And the next time you see it, we will sort out the steering, and we will commence to the tear down of the body. That is how we will do. Thank you again so much. Hopefully it'll be a little cleaner when we get here next time. You know, I had said in the live stream, which was the unofficial episode 1 of It Came From the Workbench, Volume 63, I had said, I'm just going to turn the lights off. And I did. So, thank you so much for joining us again. Questions, comments, concerns in the comments below. If you have any comments or questions, please do let me know. Thanks so much. In between now and when we meet again, please want to all do your very best to have a good one. We'll see you in the next one here from the Canyon, where we do indoor and sometimes outdoor things.